The year was 2387, and Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for 150 years. During this time, humans had built a reputation that surprised many alien species. They were not warriors or conquerors like most expected. Instead, they were diplomats, peacekeepers, and helpers. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the research vessel Harmony, looking out at the stars. She had served in Earth's military for 30 years, but most of that time had been spent on peaceful missions. Her ships carried medical supplies to sick worlds, helped build schools on poor planets, and protected trade routes from pirates. It was good work, but sometimes Chen wondered what would happen if Earth ever faced a real war. Ambassador Marcus Webb sat in his office on the space station New Harmony, reading reports from across human space. Every day brought news of successful negotiations, new trade agreements, and cultural exchange programs. Humans had colonies on 47 worlds, and each one was known for being peaceful and helpful to their neighbors. Webb was proud of what humanity had achieved. When Earth first joined the galactic community, many alien species had been afraid. Humans came from a world with a violent history. They had fought terrible wars and done horrible things to each other. But in space, they had chosen a different path. They solved problems with words instead of weapons. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked on the colony world of New Geneva, a beautiful planet covered in forests and lakes. The colony was home to 50,000 humans who lived alongside scientists from 12 different alien species. They studied biology, shared art, and worked together to understand the universe. Children played in parks where human kids learned games from alien friends. New Geneva was everything that humanity hoped to achieve in space. It showed that different species could live together in peace. Dr. Vasquez spent her days studying alien plants and animals, making discoveries that helped everyone in the galaxy. She had 2 children who went to school with young aliens from across known space. On the other side of the galaxy, the Kethar Empire grew stronger each year. The Kethar were tall, powerful creatures with thick gray skin and sharp teeth. They believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. Their empire had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaving weaker species and taking their resources. Emperor Krexthor ruled the Kethar from his War Moon fortress. He looked at star maps showing human colonies and felt disgust. These soft creatures had spread across space without fighting for their territory. They gave away technology and helped their enemies. In the Emperor's mind, humans were weak and needed to be taught their place. The Kethar military leaders agreed with their emperor. They had watched human research vessels travel through space with minimal weapons. They had seen human colonies that spent money on art museums instead of defense systems. General Vextar, the Emperor's top commander, often said that humans were like children playing at being adults in a dangerous galaxy. The attack on New Geneva began without warning on a Tuesday morning. Dr. Vasquez was in her laboratory when the first Kethar ships appeared in the sky. They came from hyperspace in a formation designed to surround the planet. There was no communication, no demand for surrender, no chance to evacuate. The Kethar bombardment started immediately. Their weapons targeted not just military sites but schools, hospitals, and homes. They wanted to cause maximum suffering. Dr. Vasquez watched in horror as the research center next to hers exploded in flames. She ran outside to find chaos everywhere. Kethar soldiers landed in the city centers and began hunting civilians. They did not simply kill quickly. They made it slow and painful, enjoying the fear in their victims' eyes. They captured human children and forced their parents to watch as they hurt them. They destroyed art galleries and burned libraries, laughing at the humans who tried to save their culture. The worst part was that the Kethar recorded everything. They broadcast the massacre across their empire as entertainment. Kethar citizens watched human families being torn apart and cheered for their soldiers. They placed bets on how long different humans would survive torture. Dr. Vasquez and 11 other humans managed to escape in a small research ship. They hid in the asteroid belt while the Kethar finished destroying New Geneva. For 3 days they watched their home burn from space. When the Kethar ships finally left, nothing remained of the beautiful colony except smoking ruins. News of the massacre reached Earth within hours. Ambassador Webb was in a meeting with the Galactic Council when the emergency message arrived. He read the report 3 times before he could believe it. 50,000 humans dead, an entire world destroyed, all for no reason except Kethar entertainment. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the situation. Ambassador Webb stood before them and demanded action. He showed them videos of the destruction and asked for immediate military intervention. The response was disappointing but not surprising. The Zephyrian delegate expressed deep concern, but said his government could not risk war with the Kethar Empire. The Crystalline Federation promised to monitor the situation, but took no action. The Void Speakers actually praised the Kethar for maintaining natural order in the galaxy. Ambassador Webb spent 2 weeks trying to build support for sanctions against the Kethar. Most species agreed that the massacre was wrong, but none wanted to do anything about it. Some quietly suggested that humans had grown too comfortable in space and needed to learn hard lessons about reality. The breaking point came when the Kethar ambassador arrived at the council station. Ambassador Thakmul was a huge Kethar warrior with scars covering his face. When Webb confronted him about New Geneva, Thakmul laughed and called it pest control. He said humans were like insects that bred too quickly and needed to be stepped on occasionally. Webb felt something break inside him when he heard those words. For his entire career, he had believed that reason and kindness could solve any problem. He had faith that intelligent beings would choose cooperation over conflict. But looking at Thakmul's amused expression, he realized how naive he had been. That night, Webb sent a coded message to Earth. It was short and simple. Diplomatic solutions have been exhausted. Military options are now authorized. On Earth, Admiral Chen received new orders from the civilian government. For the first time in over a century, Earth's military was given permission to act without restraint. General Thane Kovac, the head of strategic planning, began opening files that had been classified for decades. Dr. Vasquez arrived on Earth 2 days later. Her ship landed at the capital spaceport, and she was immediately taken to address the global assembly. She stood before representatives from every nation on Earth and told them what she had seen. Her voice was steady as she described the torture of children and the burning of schools. When she finished speaking, the assembly was silent for a long moment. Then the Prime Minister of Earth stood up and asked a simple question. "What do you need from us, Doctor?" Dr. Vasquez looked at the faces around her and saw something new in their eyes. The kindness was still there, but underneath it was something harder and older. Something that remembered what humans had been before they chose to be civilized. "I need you to remember who we are," she said. "Not who we chose to become, but who we were when survival was all that mattered." The Prime Minister nodded slowly. "Admiral Chen, you have full authorization to protect human colonies by any means necessary." Admiral Chen stood up and saluted. "Understood, sir. We'll show them what humans are really capable of." As the assembly broke up, General Kovac approached Dr. Vasquez. "Doctor, I want you to know something. For 150 years, we've been playing a role in this galaxy. We've been the peaceful species, the helpers, the ones who solve problems with words. But that was always a choice. What do you mean?" she asked. "We chose to be civilized because we remembered what happened when we weren't. But some people mistake choice for weakness. The Kethar are about to learn the difference." That night, messages went out to every human colony and ship in space. The orders were simple: prepare for war. Not the limited conflicts that humans had fought as peacekeepers, but total war of the kind that Earth had not seen for centuries. The galaxy was about to discover why humanity had tried so hard to be civilized. The recall order went out to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. Within 72 hours, Earth's diplomatic missions packed their bags and headed home. Humanitarian aid programs stopped overnight. Cultural exchange students were pulled from alien universities. The message was clear without being spoken. If the galaxy would not protect innocent people, then humanity would handle the job themselves. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Earth's primary fleet base, watching status reports flow in from across human space. What she saw amazed even her. Ships that had been listed as research vessels for decades were revealing their true nature. The scientific endeavor dropped its civilian disguise to show heavy weapons and military-grade shields. The cultural exchange transformed from a passenger ship into a troop transport capable of carrying 10,000 soldiers. General Kovac entered the command center carrying a thick folder marked with security seals. "Admiral, it's time you learned what we've really been building out here." He opened the folder and spread out star charts that Chen had never seen before. Red dots marked dozens of locations throughout human territory. Every one of these is a military depot disguised as something else. Mining stations that actually produce weapons-grade materials. Agricultural research facilities that grow combat rations for armies. Trading posts that store enough ammunition to supply a war fleet. Chen studied the charts with growing amazement. How long has this been going on? Since we first joined the galactic community, Kovac replied. The government decided that if we were going to be peaceful, we needed to be prepared for the day when peace failed. We've been building a war machine for 150 years, hiding it behind research projects and civilian infrastructure. Dr. Vasquez had become something unexpected in the weeks since New Geneva's destruction. Her quiet voice and steady manner made her a powerful speaker for human determination. She appeared on news broadcasts across Earth's colonies carrying a simple message. They wanted to see what humans are really like when we stop pretending to be harmless. Now they will learn. The transformation of human space was rapid and total. Factory ships that had produced consumer goods retooled their production lines to build weapons and military equipment. Passenger transports were converted into warships. Even civilian miners and farmers received military training and weapons. Emperor Krexthor watched reports of human activity with amusement. Intelligence officers showed him images of humans building defenses and training soldiers. Look at these soft creatures playing at war, he told his generals. They think they can frighten the Kethar Empire with their toys. General Vextar agreed with his emperor. Their ships are still weak and their soldiers have no experience with real combat. Shall we attack another of their colonies to remind them of their place? Yes, the emperor decided. Hit the mining world of Port Darwin. Show them that building defenses is useless against Kethtar's strength. The second attack began 3 weeks after New Geneva. 20 Kethar warships dropped out of hyperspace near Port Darwin, expecting to find another defenseless human colony. Instead, they found Admiral Chen's flagship waiting for them. The Endeavour had spent decades disguised as a research vessel studying star formation. In reality, it was a battlecruiser designed specifically to fight larger fleets. Its weapons had been built using technology that humanity had developed in secret, combining alien science with human engineering in ways that no other species had attempted. The battle lasted 7 minutes. The Kethar ships attacked in their traditional formation, expecting to overwhelm the single human vessel with superior numbers. They had never faced an enemy that used coordinated point defense systems, adaptive tactical computers, and weapons that could adjust their effects based on target analysis. Admiral Chen watched as Kethar ships exploded one after another. Her weapons didn't just damage enemy vessels. They systematically disabled each ship's ability to fight back before destroying it completely. When the battle ended, 20 Kethar warships had been reduced to debris, and the Endeavour had taken no significant damage. The Emperor was furious when he received reports of the defeat. How is this possible? 20 ships destroyed by one human vessel? His intelligence chief had no good answer. My lord, their technology appears to be far more advanced than our estimates suggested. Their single ship had the firepower of an entire battle fleet. Then we will send 2 fleets, the Emperor declared. Crush their mining world and show them that numbers still matter. But Port Darwin was no longer just a mining colony. In the 3 weeks since New Geneva, it had become a fortress world. Human military engineers had turned mining equipment into planetary defense weapons. Asteroid miners had become fighter pilots. Civilian shelters had been converted into command bunkers capable of coordinating space battles. General Kovac arrived at Port Darwin with a fleet of ships that the galaxy had never seen before. These were not converted civilian vessels, but purpose-built warships that had been constructed in secret over many decades. Each ship incorporated lessons learned from studying every major military force in the galaxy, then improved upon those designs using human innovation. The second battle for Port Darwin was not really a battle at all. The Kethar fleet arrived expecting to face desperate defenders. Instead, they encountered a coordinated defense system that treated warfare as a science to be perfected, rather than a ritual to be performed. Human ships appeared from multiple directions simultaneously, using quantum displacement technology that allowed them to seem to be in several places at once. Their weapons struck with precision that seemed almost supernatural, disabling enemy systems in exactly the right order to create maximum confusion and panic. The Kethar tried to retreat after losing half their fleet in the first 10 minutes. They discovered that human ships were faster than their intelligence had suggested. None of the Kethar vessels escaped to report what they had learned. News of the second defeat spread quickly through Kethar space. For the first time in their history, their military had been completely defeated by an enemy they had considered weak. Emperor Kethar called an emergency meeting of his war council. "Explain to me how humans destroyed 2 of our fleets," he demanded. General Vextar studied intelligence reports with a confused expression. "My lord, they seem to have been hiding their true capabilities. Their peaceful behavior was apparently some kind of deception." "You mean they were planning to attack us all along?" "No, my lord. They appear to have built defensive capabilities while genuinely pursuing peaceful policies. But when we attacked their civilians, they activated military systems that we did not know existed." The Emperor stood up and paced around the room. "How strong are they, really?" "We do not know, my lord. Our intelligence about human capabilities appears to have been completely wrong." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Vasquez was recording a message that would be broadcast to every human colony. She stood in the ruins of a memorial garden dedicated to the victims of New Geneva, speaking directly into the camera. "To every human in space, I want you to understand what we are facing. The Kethar Empire believes that mercy is weakness and kindness is stupidity. They think that because we chose to be peaceful, we are incapable of defending ourselves. They are about to learn how wrong they are." She paused and looked directly at the camera. "For 150 years, we have shown the galaxy our best nature. We have been teachers, healers, and peacemakers. But we are still the same species that survived ice ages, tamed fire, and turned a world of predators into our home. We chose to be civilized because we knew what we were capable of when we weren't." The message continued. "The Kethar wanted to see what humans are really like when we stop pretending to be harmless. They wanted to test whether our kindness was strength or weakness. Now they have their answer." Admiral Chen received authorization to begin offensive operations against Kethar military targets. But these would not be traditional fleet battles. Human military doctrine had evolved far beyond simple ship-to-ship combat. Human special forces began appearing deep inside Kethar territory, striking at supply depots and communication centers. They did not try to hold territory or engage in direct combat. Instead, they created chaos and confusion, making the Kethar military leaders doubt their own security. Kethar ships began finding their supply lines cut by cloaked human vessels that appeared without warning and vanished before retaliation could be organized. Communication networks were infiltrated and turned against their users. Even Kethar entertainment broadcasts were replaced with recordings from human history. The psychological campaign was carefully designed to teach the Kethar about their enemies. They learned about the world wars that had taught humanity the true cost of hatred. They saw records of the genocides and ethnic cleansings that had shown humans what evil looked like. They watched documentaries about the scientific advances that had come from human determination to understand and control their environment. The message was clear. You think you invented brutality? We perfected it, then chose to be better. But you have reminded us who we used to be. Emperor Kethar found himself facing something he had never experienced before: fear. The Kethar Empire had built their military strategy around one simple principle: overwhelming force applied directly to the enemy. Their ships were bigger, their weapons were stronger, and their soldiers were tougher than most species in the galaxy. For 300 years, this approach had never failed them. They were completely unprepared for an enemy that refused to fight fair. General Vextar stood in his command center, staring at a tactical display that made no sense. Kethar fleets controlled the space around 5-star systems, but somehow human forces were operating freely behind their lines. Supply convoys were being destroyed by ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished before his forces could respond. How are they doing this? He demanded from his intelligence officer. Sir, we believe they are using some form of advanced stealth technology, combined with what they call asymmetric warfare tactics. Instead of meeting our fleets in direct battle, they attack our weakest points and avoid our strengths. General Vextar had never heard of asymmetric warfare. In Kethar culture, enemies faced each other in honest combat. The stronger warrior won and the weaker one died. It was simple and clean. What the humans were doing felt like cheating. Admiral Chen sat in her mobile command ship, reviewing reports from human special forces units spread across Kethar space. Her officers had studied every military conflict in human history. learning lessons from Earth's ancient wars and applying them to modern space combat. Status report on Operation Ghost Strike, she requested. Commander Torres pulled up a holographic display. We've successfully infiltrated the Kethar communication network. Their military commanders are receiving false orders, and their supply ships are being rerouted to empty systems. Estimated reduction in their operational effectiveness, 40%. And the psychological operations? Broadcasting on schedule, Admiral. We're showing them historical footage from Earth's wars, focusing on the development of guerrilla tactics and resistance movements. The message seems to be getting through. Kethar soldiers are beginning to show signs of stress and paranoia. Chen nodded with satisfaction. They expected us to line up our ships and have an honorable battle. Instead, we're showing them what humans learned from thousands of years of warfare. The enemy's mind is the most important battlefield. Dr. Vasquez had become the voice of human determination throughout the colonies. Her daily broadcasts reached every human settlement and were secretly transmitted into alien space as well. Today's message was different from her usual calls for resolve and unity. Today I want to talk to our enemies, she said, looking directly into the camera, to the Kethar Empire and any species considering joining them. You made a fundamental mistake when you judged us. You looked at our peaceful colonies and thought we were weak. You saw our diplomatic missions and assumed we were naive. You watched us help other species and decided we were foolish. She paused, her voice growing harder. You forgot that peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence. It is the choice to use that capacity wisely. We chose to be civilized because we knew what happened when we weren't. We chose to be helpful because we remembered what it was like to be alone and afraid. We chose to be diplomatic because we had learned the true cost of war. The broadcast continued. But you mistook our restraint for weakness. You tested our resolve with the murder of innocent people. Now you will learn what humans are capable of when we stop being civilized. Meanwhile, human technology was revealing capabilities that no alien species had suspected. Medical nanobots, originally designed to fight diseases, were reprogrammed to target specific biological functions in hostile species. Terraforming equipment became planetary siege weapons capable of altering a world's atmosphere. Entertainment systems designed for virtual reality became tools for psychological warfare. The most shocking revelation was human manufacturing capacity. For decades, other species had watched human colonies produce art, literature, and consumer goods. They had not realized that every human industrial facility was designed with dual purpose in mind. Within weeks of the war declaration, human space was producing military equipment at a rate that terrified alien observers. Factory ships that had made household items were now building weapons. Agricultural vessels were manufacturing combat rations and medical supplies. Mining operations were producing materials for ship construction. Emperor Krexthor convened an emergency meeting with representatives from other military powers in the galaxy. He needed allies to help him understand and counter the human threat. The humans are using dishonorable tactics, he complained to the assembled delegates. They attack our supply lines instead of our fleets. They spread propaganda instead of fighting battles. They use technology for purposes it was not designed for. The Void Speaker representative, a tall being made of crystallized gas, responded with what sounded like laughter. You are upset because your enemy is more creative than you expected. I am upset because they refuse to fight properly. The Crystalline Federation delegate leaned forward. Perhaps the problem is not their tactics but your assumption that there is a proper way to fight. Humans appear to understand that war is about achieving objectives, not following rules. But they were supposed to be peaceful. They were peaceful, the Void Speaker observed. Until you gave them a reason not to be. The meeting broke up without any alliance agreements. Other species were beginning to watch the conflict with growing interest, wondering if they had misunderstood humanity as badly as the Kethar had. Human special forces were operating throughout Kethar space. But they were not trying to conquer territory. Instead, they were systematically destroying the Empire's ability to function as a unified military force. Communication relays were sabotaged, forcing local commanders to make decisions without central coordination. Supply depots were destroyed, leaving Kethar fleets stranded without fuel or ammunition. Captain Maria Santos led a team of 12 humans who had infiltrated the Kethar home system. They were not there to attack the capital world directly. Instead, they had spent 3 weeks studying Kethar culture and psychology, learning how to create maximum impact with minimum force. Remember, she told her team as they prepared for their mission, we're not here to kill civilians or destroy cities. We're here to break their confidence and show them that their military cannot protect them. The team's target was the Emperor's personal communication array, which broadcast his speeches to the entire empire. They planned to interrupt his next address with footage from New Geneva, followed by a simple message. Your Emperor's actions brought this upon you. End the war, and we will return to peace. The operation succeeded perfectly. Emperor Kethar was in the middle of a speech about Kethar superiority when his own communication system began showing images of human children being murdered by his soldiers. The broadcast reached every Kethar world, showing the Empire's citizens exactly what their military had done. The psychological impact was enormous. Many Kethar had believed that the war was a glorious conquest against weak enemies. Seeing the reality of what their soldiers had done to innocent people caused widespread doubt and questioning. General Vextar found himself dealing with rebellion in his own ranks. Kethar soldiers were beginning to refuse orders, not because they had suddenly become peaceful, but because they were starting to fear their human enemies. Reports from the front lines described human forces that seemed to be everywhere at once, striking without warning and disappearing before retaliation was possible. Sir, his aide reported, the Fourth Fleet is requesting permission to withdraw from the Centauri system. They report that human forces have cut off their supply lines and their morale is collapsing. Denied, Vextar snapped. They will hold their position. Sir, the fleet commander says that half his ships have mechanical failures that his engineers cannot explain. He suspects human sabotage. Vextar closed his eyes. How do you fight an enemy that can make your own equipment stop working? Admiral Chen was receiving reports that exceeded her most optimistic projections. Human forces had managed to neutralize 3 Kethar fleets without fighting a single traditional battle. Enemy ships were breaking down, supply lines were collapsing, and Kethar morale was disintegrating. Admiral, Commander Torres reported, we're detecting movement in several alien fleets. It appears that other species are beginning to take sides in this conflict. Chen studied the tactical display. Which way are they leaning? Mixed, sir. Some species are expressing support for the Kethar Empire, saying that humans are becoming too dangerous. Others are remaining neutral. A few are quietly signaling that they approve of our actions. And the species that are supporting the Kethar? They appear to believe that human military capabilities represent a threat to galactic stability. They're organizing some kind of coalition. Chen felt a cold sensation in her stomach. Fighting the Kethar Empire was one thing. Fighting half the galaxy was something else entirely. Sir, Torres continued, we're also receiving intelligence that several species are studying our tactics and trying to develop countermeasures. Admiral Chen looked at the star charts showing the positions of alien fleets. They still don't understand, do they? They think this is about military technology and tactical innovation. They don't realize that the Galactic Coalition formed 6 months after the destruction of New Geneva. 12 species joined together, claiming that humanity had become a threat to galactic peace and stability. They pointed to human military innovations, the speed of human mobilization, and the effectiveness of human warfare as evidence that Earth needed to be stopped before they became too powerful. Ambassador Thakmul of the Kethar Empire stood before the coalition assembly, his scarred face showing satisfaction as he addressed the gathered delegates. The humans have revealed their true nature, he declared. They pretend to be peaceful, but look how quickly they turn to violence. They are a cancer that will spread throughout the galaxy if we do not act. The Zephyrian delegate nodded in agreement. We have studied their tactics. They do not fight with honor. They attack civilian infrastructure, spread propaganda, and use psychological warfare. These are not the methods of a civilized species. The Crystalline Federation representative spoke next. Our analysis shows that human industrial capacity far exceeds previous estimates. If they are allowed to continue their military buildup, they will soon be capable of challenging any force in the galaxy. The coalition's reasoning was both logical and completely wrong. They saw humanity's rapid transformation from peaceful to militaristic as evidence of deception and inherent aggression. They interpreted human military effectiveness as proof of long-term planning for conquest. They failed to understand that they were looking at a defensive response to genocide. Admiral Chen received word of the coalition's formation while reviewing battle reports from the Kethar front. The news did not surprise her, but it did sadden her. How many ships? She asked her intelligence officer. Combined coalition forces total approximately 800 vessels, sir. The Kethar Empire contributes 300. The Zephyrian Republic brings 200, and the remaining coalition members provide the rest. Against how many human ships? Our current active fleet consists of 120 vessels, sir. However, shipyards throughout human space are working at maximum capacity. We expect to have 300 ships operational within 6 months. Chen studied the numbers. Even with their technological advantages, facing a coalition of that size would be difficult. What about our allies? Sir, we don't really have any. Most species are remaining neutral, waiting to see how the conflict develops. A few have expressed private support, but none are willing to commit military forces. Dr. Vasquez was recording another broadcast when news of the coalition reached Earth. She paused in her prepared remarks and looked directly into the camera. I have just learned that several alien species have decided to join the Kethar Empire in their war against humanity. They claim that we have become too dangerous and must be stopped. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. To those species, I want to say this. You had 150 years to judge our character. You watched us help refugees, build schools, cure diseases, and resolve conflicts peacefully. You saw us share our technology freely and ask for nothing in return. You witnessed our restraint even when provoked. She paused, her eyes never leaving the camera. But when someone murdered 50,000 of our people, including children, and broadcast it as entertainment, you called our response aggressive. When we defended ourselves against further attacks, you decided we were too dangerous. You have chosen to side with those who commit genocide against those who oppose it. The broadcast continued. You have made your choice. Now you will live with the consequences. The coalition's first offensive was planned as a demonstration of overwhelming force. They would attack the human colony of Kepler Station with a fleet of 200 ships, expecting to crush human resistance and force Earth to negotiate. The operation was designed to be quick, decisive, and relatively bloodless. Admiral Chen was waiting for them. Kepler Station sat at the junction of 3 major hyperspace routes, making it strategically important for trade and military movement. The coalition planners assumed it would be lightly defended, suitable for their demonstration attack. They were wrong on every level. The human fleet that emerged to meet the coalition force was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. These were not converted civilian vessels or hastily built warships. They were purpose-designed instruments of war, incorporating technologies that made them seem almost alien in their capabilities. The Battle of Kepler Station lasted 4 hours and changed the way every species in the galaxy thought about warfare. Human ships moved in coordinated patterns that seemed to ignore the normal limitations of space combat. Their weapons struck with precision that suggested a level of targeting technology no one had imagined possible. But the most shocking aspect was not the technology. It was the tactics. Human forces did not just fight to win the battle. They fought to make the coalition ships obsolete. Admiral Chen's flagship Retribution demonstrated quantum displacement technology that allowed it to appear to be in multiple locations simultaneously. Coalition ships found themselves shooting at targets that weren't really there, while the real human ships struck from unexpected angles. The human, AI-assisted tactical systems processed battlefield information faster than any organic mind could follow. They predicted enemy movements, calculated optimal firing solutions, and coordinated fleet actions with a precision that seemed almost supernatural to the coalition observers. The coalition lost 130 ships in 4 hours. The human fleet lost 3 vessels and had minimal damage to the rest. The survivors limped home with reports that terrified their governments. General Vextar studied the battle recordings with growing despair. How is this possible? Our intelligence said they had primitive technology and limited numbers. His aide looked nervous. Sir, our intelligence appears to have been wrong about everything. The humans were not just hiding their military strength. They were developing capabilities that we did not know were possible. What are our options? Sir, some of our commanders are suggesting that we negotiate a ceasefire while we still can. Vextar slammed his fist on the table. The Kethar Empire does not surrender to inferior species. Sir, with respect, they do not appear to be inferior. Emperor Krexthor was facing something he had never encountered in his entire life. the possibility of defeat. The coalition he had helped organize was falling apart. Species were withdrawing their support after seeing what happened at Kepler Station. Some were even sending secret messages to Earth, asking about the possibility of separate peace agreements. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked his war council. "My lord, we retain approximately 400 vessels capable of combat operations. However, morale throughout the fleet is extremely low. Many crews are requesting transfers to defensive positions. And the humans? Our intelligence estimates that they now have over 300 active warships, with more being completed every week. Their industrial capacity appears to be unlimited." The Emperor stood up and walked to the viewing window of his fortress. Outside, he could see the lights of the capital city, but even here he no longer felt safe. Human forces had demonstrated that they could appear anywhere without warning. "What do they want?" he asked quietly. "My lord, what do the humans want? If they wished to conquer us, they could have done so by now. If they wanted to destroy our worlds, their weapons are capable of it, but they have focused their attacks on military targets. What is their objective?" General Vextar consulted his reports. "Based on their broadcasts and communications we have intercepted, they appear to want the complete dismantling of our military threat and punishment for those responsible for the new Geneva massacre. They want us to surrender completely." "Yes." "My lord," the Emperor was quiet for a long moment. "And if we refuse?" "Based on what we have observed, my lord, they will continue to systematically destroy our military capability until surrender is no longer a choice." Dr. Vasquez stood before the memorial wall at New Geneva Station, the orbital facility that had been built to replace the destroyed colony. Each light on the wall represented someone who had died in the massacre. She placed her hand on the memorial and spoke to the galaxy. 6 months ago, the Kethar Empire murdered 50,000 innocent people for entertainment. Today, they lead a coalition of species that claims we are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They say our response to genocide was excessive. They argue that defending ourselves makes us a threat to galactic peace. She turned to face the camera. "To every species watching this broadcast, I want you to understand something very important. We did not want this war. We tried for 150 years to show you that cooperation was stronger than conflict, that wisdom was more valuable than weapons, that compassion could overcome cruelty." Her voice grew harder. "But you chose to judge our character by our restraint rather than our actions. You mistook our choice to be civilized for an inability to be anything else. When evil showed its face, you decided to protect the predators instead of the victims." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "You asked for this. You demanded to see what humans are really like when we stop being civilized. Now you know." The end came not with a great final battle, but with a simple realization that spread through the coalition like a virus. They could not win. The Zephyrian Republic was the first to break. After losing 3 fleets in 2 months, their government sent a secret message to Earth requesting separate peace negotiations. The Crystalline Federation followed 2 weeks later. Within a month, the coalition existed only on paper, leaving the Kethar Empire to face humanity alone. Emperor Krexthor sat in his throne room, reading reports that told the same story from every front. His military was being systematically dismantled. Human forces had not simply defeated his fleets, they had made them irrelevant. Kethar warships that ventured into space were detected, tracked, and destroyed before they could even find targets to engage. The humans had turned warfare into a science, and they had perfected it. "My lord," General Vextar approached the throne with obvious reluctance. "The fleet commanders are requesting permission to withdraw all remaining ships to defensive positions around our core worlds." "How many ships do we have left?" the Emperor asked quietly. "Approximately 60 vessels capable of combat operations, my lord. The humans have destroyed or disabled the rest without suffering significant losses themselves." Emperor Krexthor had ruled through strength for his entire life. The idea of surrender was foreign to everything he believed about Kethar superiority, but even he could not ignore the reality of the situation. "What are they waiting for?" he asked. "If they can destroy our fleet so easily, why haven't they attacked our worlds?" General Vextar had been wondering the same thing. "My lord, their actions suggest they are not interested in conquest. They appear to be systematically removing our ability to threaten them, while avoiding unnecessary destruction of civilian targets. They want us to surrender." "Yes, My lord, the Emperor was quiet for a long moment. And if we refuse? Based on what we have observed, they will continue to eliminate our military capability until surrender is no longer a choice. They have demonstrated patience and precision that suggests they are prepared to continue this process for as long as necessary. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the final phase of the war unfold. Human forces had surrounded the Kethar home system, not to attack it, but to contain it. No Kethar ship could leave without being detected and tracked. No supplies could reach their military forces. The Empire was being systematically isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Admiral, Commander Torres reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Kethar Emperor. He's requesting terms for surrender. Chen had been expecting this moment for weeks. Put him through. Emperor Krexthor appeared on the main screen, his proud bearing now replaced by the weight of defeat. Admiral Chen, I wish to discuss the terms of our surrender. There will be no discussion, Chen replied calmly. You will surrender unconditionally. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your government will be restructured under galactic supervision. The individuals responsible for the New Geneva massacre will be turned over to human authorities for trial. The Emperor's jaw tightened. And if I refuse these terms, then we will continue to systematically eliminate your military capability until you have no choice but to accept them. The terms will not change regardless of how long you wait. You would destroy an entire civilization? Chen's expression did not change. You destroyed New Geneva. You broadcast the murder of children as entertainment. You chose to test whether human mercy was strength or weakness. Now you have your answer. The Emperor stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I accept your terms. Dr. Vasquez stood in the courtroom where the war crimes trials were being held. The defendants included Emperor Krexthor, General Vextar, and dozens of other Kethar officials who had planned or participated in the New Geneva massacre. The trials were being broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing every species exactly what had happened and why humanity had responded as they did. As the chief prosecutor, Dr. Vasquez read the charges against each defendant. Her voice was steady as she described every life lost, every family destroyed, every child murdered for the entertainment of a cruel empire. The evidence was overwhelming, including the Kethar's own recordings of their crimes. The defendants claimed they were following the natural order of the galaxy, she told the court. They argue that the strong have the right to dominate the weak. They say that mercy is a weakness that leads to extinction. She turned to face the defendants. They are wrong. Mercy is not weakness, it is the choice made by those strong enough to show restraint. Civilization is not the absence of the capacity for violence. It is the wisdom to use that capacity only when necessary. The trials lasted 3 months. Every defendant was found guilty. The sentences ranged from life imprisonment to execution, depending on their level of involvement in the massacre. Emperor Krexthor received the death penalty for ordering the attack and broadcasting it as entertainment. The new galactic order that emerged from the war was very different from what had existed before. Earth had become the dominant military power, not through conquest but through the demonstration of overwhelming capability. Every species now understood that human research vessels and civilian infrastructure could become a war fleet in a matter of days. Ambassador Webb returned to diplomatic service, but the conversations he had now were very different from those of the past. When he spoke about peace and cooperation, other species listened with a new kind of attention. They had learned that human offers of friendship came with an implicit guarantee. Accept our help, and we will protect you. Threaten our civilians, and we will destroy you. The Galactic Council reconvened with a new understanding of human nature. Species that had previously ignored Earth's diplomatic initiatives now competed for human attention and support. Trade agreements that had been stalled for decades were suddenly approved. Peace negotiations that had failed for years were resolved in weeks. Admiral Chen retired from active duty, but she remained as an advisor to Earth's military command. Her final report to the government was brief and direct. We have achieved our objectives. The threat to human civilians has been eliminated. Our military superiority has been established. The galaxy understands that we are not a species to be trifled with. General Kovac began training programs for other species who wanted to learn human military doctrine. The classes were not about sharing advanced technology, but about teaching the fundamental principles of effective warfare. preparation, coordination, adaptation, and the will to see conflicts through to their conclusion. The most important lesson, he told his alien students, is not how to fight, but when to fight. Humans spent 150 years trying to avoid war because we knew what it would cost. When we finally fought, we did so with everything we had because we understood that half measures would only lead to more conflict. Dr. Vasquez established the new Geneva Memorial Foundation, dedicated to ensuring that the galaxy never forgot what had happened and why. The Foundation's mission was simple: teach every species that there are consequences for targeting innocent civilians, and that some species are willing and able to enforce those consequences. The memorial itself was built on the site of the original colony. It consisted of 50,000 lights, one for each person who had died in the massacre, but surrounding those lights were thousands more, representing every Kethar soldier and civilian who had died in the war that followed. This memorial is not about celebrating victory, Dr. Vasquez explained to the first group of galactic visitors. It is about remembering the cost of cruelty and the price of believing that mercy is weakness. She led the visitors to a wall where the final message of the memorial was inscribed in every known galactic language. For 150 years, humanity chose to be civilized because we knew what the alternative looked like. We tried to show the galaxy that intelligence and compassion were stronger than brutality and fear. When that lesson was rejected, we demonstrated the consequences. The message continued. We hope this is the last time such a demonstration becomes necessary. The galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. Trade resumed, diplomatic relations were restored, and life went on much as it had before the war. But everyone understood that things had fundamentally changed. The myth of human weakness had been shattered forever. Human colonies returned to their peaceful pursuits, but now, every civilian facility had backup military systems. Every trade vessel carried defensive weapons. Every research project had potential military applications. The galaxy had learned that human civilization was not built on naivety, but on the conscious choice to restrain tremendous power. 10 years after the end of the war, Ambassador Webb gave a speech to the Galactic Council that summed up the new reality. Humanity tried for 150 years to prove that peace was possible through mutual respect and cooperation. When that approach failed, we demonstrated that peace could be maintained through other means. He looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species. We prefer the first method, but we are prepared to use the second method whenever necessary. The choice is yours. The galaxy had learned its lesson. In the decades that followed, no species ever again mistook human kindness for weakness.